Now,
Terry, I think that what Government of India is doing, Government of India is taking the two cases separately. It is taking the American case separately and the Canadian case separately. The Government of India says that, well, some evidence has come for the foiled assassination bid on Pannun from America, and they've started the investigation.
Pannun and Nijjar. Pannun
So have
and
the
Nijjar.
Americans.
That's what
Yeah.
the indictment says.
Right. But they say that as far as Niger case is concerned, Canadians have failed to give the evidence so far. That has been the Indian stand. Well, you're trying to link the two because in that indictment, both are named, but India has been treating the two cases separately.
Well, so what? I mean, with respect, it's the same plot against the same targets by the same people. It's the same allegations. It's just that in the one case, the Americans have been subtle and discreet, a little more sophisticated, if you like, by leaving some wiggle room. They didn't point the finger at the government itself. No, they pointed the finger at an employee of the government, leaving a way out. And they didn't make a big speech in Parliament. They didn't have President Biden get up and make a big speech about how outrageous and unacceptable this was, an invasion of our sovereignty, blah, 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 whereas Trudeau did make a big speech. So they backed India into a corner. So there are some differences between the cases, but it's the same plot. So I'm simply making the point that if you believe what India says, that it is taking this very seriously, then you can't argue that nobody takes them seriously. It just ain't so. So,
Right.
There's problems on both sides, I grant you. And
Veena,
yes, India is treating it differently. I'm just
yeah,
saying that if you look at the indictments, it's not different.
right. Let Veena respond to this. Veena, if you can unmute, Veena, yes. The point that he is saying is that the two cases are the same. While Americans were more subtle in their approach, the Canadians have taken a different route, where the Prime Minister of the country stood up in the Parliament and said that agents of the government of India were responsible for the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
I'm saying, first of all, let me clarify. When I say that nobody's taking it seriously, India, of course, is the country who is being accused, and we are responding as a very responsible member of the international community. We have done everything with great responsibility, with great seriousness. We have not joked or made remarks about credible allegations and so on. We are responding. I'm talking about the rest of the world. We know in our discussions, we know what they say, we know what responses are coming in. We know that, what the rest of the world feels about what is happening in Canada. And yes, you're right. The two cases are separate. What is happening in Canada and what is happening in USA, our discussions with the two governments are separate. There's no question of the discussions being, linked in any way. And we're treating them with all seriousness, each of them. I mean, we have always asked the Canadian government, give us the evidence. When you say credible allegations, what do you mean by that? Where is the evidence? And it has not been forthcoming. Despite a series of meetings, there are only public allegations coming up. And everybody, the whole world is looking at that. That, every time we ask for allegation, there's one more allegation. And then something is leaked to the Washington Post. Something is leaked to the Globe and Mail. So this is a kind of and then the minister actually says this is part of our communications campaign. So, I mean, it seems as though this is something which is targeting India in such a bizarre fashion that it is really hiding something else. And we have said repeatedly, even when Hardeep Singh Nijjar went there, he was an illegal immigrant. We have given all the information to the government of Canada, but then still he was, given full citizenship. And there's so many others, even Arshad Dalla case, so many others where we have always responded with great seriousness. When we say that these people are responsible for, crimes in India and they need to be sent back to be tried, it's based on hard evidence. Is based on hard evidence sent to the Interpol. It's not some public statement made by a minister or an official. And certainly, those are very responsible responses that India is making. India is not taking it lightly at all. And why should we? When somebody is making an allegation against you, we are responding with all the information we have. If there's something in the American case and it's gone into court, well, it'll be tackled over there. So I think that one cannot try and mix up these two cases at all. One certainly should not, because this is not how international relations works, and it has to be dealt with separately in each case. And I think, again, I would say that India has responded strongly, unequivocally at all points. And there has been no comeback from Canada on those points. Canada has not provided any evidence. So how can they say that, that we have given the evidence and India not doing this, so new and so new? You can make any kind of allegations, but there is no evidence, and and you're just trying to raise the ante all the time. With what purpose? With what purpose? What is the purpose that the Canadian government is serving?
Let Terry respond. Terry, the point that she's making is that Canada is perhaps using a diversionary tactic, trying to divert the attention from some other issue. Now, recently there were news reports that there are some spies, Chinese spies, uh, who are legislators or members of the parliament or some similar sort of problems that are existing in China, to put the focus on India continuously, to raise the bar, to divert the attention from other issues that are plaguing that country.
Well, firstly, I don't think any such effort can or would succeed. Canadians can look at two things at the same time, or 10 things at the same time. It's not a problem. It's just because there's another issue doesn't mean we can't pay attention to them both, just as you've just argued that India can look at both the American and the Canadian allegations at the same time. And secondly, I don't hear an answer yet to the question, if the allegations are absurd, preposterous, as India says in the Canadian case, why was Vikram Yadav fired? Why is he named and shamed and fired and booted out of RAW? Why are those allegations being taken seriously in the United States if they're absurd? Because, I mean, we can go around this one more time if you like, but it's no use saying that the cases are separate when the cases themselves say they're not. When the case itself says, if you look at paragraph 6, look at paragraph 28 of the Nikhil Gupta indictment, there you will see Gupta himself was recorded telling the alleged hitman, who was actually an undercover cop, that Nijjar is also the target of the same plot that they're aiming at Pannun. So, you can't take that seriously and say that you're not taking it seriously. You can't have it both ways. Secondly, let me make the point that there are possible explanations other than, they're trying to divert attention from the Chinese thing or whatever. There are reasons why Canada might not want to discuss the evidence in public at this stage. Firstly, because in Canada, you could jeopardize. There is a case in the murder of Nijjar. There are 4 young men who are charged with that murder, and you can wreck that case. In Canadian law, you can't go ahead and try them in public, spread the evidence around in public before the trial, because the judge will say, wait a minute, you're tainting the jury pool. You're prejudicing the case. You're not allowed to do that. I'm throwing that evidence out. You don't want to do that. Secondly, you also have a problem with the Five Eyes information sharing agreement. This is classified information that is shared among the 5 countries, including the US and Canada. And that information you can use, but you cannot spread around somebody else's classified intelligence. Justin Trudeau is not entitled. He cannot. He won't get any more US intelligence if he goes spreading it around. So he's not allowed to describe it. And thirdly, I would say that I do not believe that Prime Minister Modi, of all people, a strong character, not a man to be easily pushed around, that he met Justin Trudeau at the G20 at the outset, a year ago in September, that he met Justin Trudeau, and when Trudeau brought this up, that Modi didn't ask any questions. He sat there like a potted plant and never said, well, what's your evidence for this? Of course he asked that question. And I find it impossible to believe that Canada has given no evidence at all, not a shred of evidence, the Indians say. I don't believe that at all.
But Terry, isn't it also a fact that a few days ago, Justin Trudeau said that he made those statements based on an intelligence input and not evidence?
Yes, and India, good point. But India has made a great fuss about how intelligence isn't evidence. Well, it is if it's factual. I mean, if you receive intelligence that there is a wiretap of you plotting a murder spree, and then one of your targets shows up dead, and then there's a photograph of you paying the hitman, that's all intelligence. If it's factual and you can prove it, it's evidence. Of course it is. Facts are still facts. Facts are still evidence. Intelligence can be factual, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if you can prove it, it's evidence. This whole business about how Trudeau has admitted he doesn't have evidence. No, he didn't.
Veena, you want to respond? Veena, if please unmute. Yeah, you want to respond. What he's trying to say is that the two cases are similar, and Justin Trudeau may not be in a position to disclose all the evidence because of the connection of the Five Eyes. He may not be in a position to release the evidence, Canada, but they may be having that evidence, and on the basis of that evidence, they are making all these allegations.
Look, India also has relations with all the Five Eyes. We are very much aware, I am sure, in our discussions of what this so-called credible allegations are about. And if the evidence was so hard and so specific, as Terry is saying, then why did Prime Minister Trudeau talk about credible allegations in Parliament? And he has never moved beyond that for more than a year now. He's just stuck to that credible allegations. So I think, please, we are all very sensible people. We are all responsible members of the international community. And if Canada and US wants to have good relations with India, this is not the road down which they have to progress. It's clear that they want to ruin the relationship with India. And it's entirely on their shoulders, but they've done it at every stage. For what purpose? Why? This is what I'm asking the question. And I think certainly there is a lot of writing in the Canadian press also about this, about the China factor and others. So please let us not dismiss it. And please let's not again and again and again, talk about the American case and the Canadian case. We are treating them entirely separately, and we are very responsible in doing that. The American government knows that we are being very responsible in doing that. So I think, please, let us not do that. Let us not try and mix up all these things and try to pretend that there's something more serious and nothing except credible allegations. We come back to that phrase which he used 1 year ago, more than a year ago, and he's still stuck to that. He hasn't gone beyond that. We've had a lot of meetings. We're prepared to look at evidence. We know what is happening. We know what the groups are doing. And as far as the Five Eyes are concerned, I've told you at one point, even US, Australia, and New Zealand told Canada, unless you give us the evidence, we're not going to raise it with India. And when they had this so-called referendum there recently, then there were people opposing it. So every country is fed up now, and every country does not understand why in Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau has this, and this is not new, it's been there since his father's time, the support for the Khalistani separatists. Why? On what basis? In India, there's no support for Khalistan. But in Canada, there's support. Then let there be a Khalistan in Canada. Let that be there. Maybe that's what it should be. Because certainly in India, there's no support for it. And that has been recognized even by Prime Minister Trudeau. So I think let us not get carried away by this. Let us be sensible. Let us be responsible members of the international community. And let's not get carried away by one statement, each one worse than the other. Sinking to new lows every day. Is this an indication of Canada's responsible position in the world community? I don't think so. Because I think that all the other Five Eyes, they know what is going on. And they don't understand why. Maybe they do understand. I don't know. I'm not privy to all those discussions, certainly not. But I think that the situation even within Canada is very, very bizarre for many people. They don't know why it's happening like this. They don't know why Canada is determined to ruin the relationship with India by every means possible without any evidence at all, and still calling it credible allegations. Let the US case proceed on its own. I think there's no right and no responsibility in mixing up the two cases.
Terry, I was when Justin Trudeau first made this statement, he stood up in the parliament. The prime minister of a country in the country's parliament stood up and made that statement. Well, you say that you Americans have been more discreet and the two cases are connected. What is it that made Justin Trudeau, the prime minister of a country, to make that statement? And since then, we've been seeing a complete focus on this case repeatedly, one after the other. Canadians insisting that the agents of the government of India were responsible for the assassination, and India has been constantly saying not a shred of evidence has been provided.
Well, sometimes governments don't tell us the whole truth. Let's be polite. And that can apply to both our governments. Let's face it. None of us here are spokesmen for these governments. I'm certainly not a spokesman for Canada. I think Canada's made a lot of mistakes on this file. And in fact, I think that for the past 43 years at least, Canada has utterly failed to address India's legitimate concerns about security concerns about the Khalistan movement in particular. And now these chickens are coming home to roost. But I want to focus on your question. You know, what's motive? Why would Trudeau do this? Why would he come out with this statement? Well, the fire brigade showing up isn't the cause of the fire. What happened here? If Trudeau is correct and the RCMP is correct, then the original mistake was not Trudeau getting up and making a speech to object to it. The original mistake was the crime itself of murder. Now, you know and I know that it is not unprecedented by any means for governments in this world to send hit squads to eliminate their enemies. When the Americans eliminated Osama bin Laden's number 2, for example, Ayman al-Zawahri, with a couple of Hellfire missiles and a drone strike, Trudeau tweeted about it saying, oh, this means we'll have a safer world. He thought it was great. He applauded. He thinks that kind of extrajudicial execution is fine. This one he doesn't think is so fine. But the problem begins not with Trudeau getting up and saying this is wrong. It begins with the crime itself. If nobody had decided, well, look, those Canadians, and this is what I think may have happened. I can't prove it. It's some speculation, but it fits the facts. What I think happened is that somebody in the Indian government decided, look, these Canadians are never going to deal with these Khalistanis. We're going to have to go in and deal with them ourselves. Now, that seems to me entirely plausible. It's not at all unprecedented. Let's remember that there have been RAW agents booted out of Britain and Germany and Australia in recent years. There have been, let's say, mysterious disappearances and deaths and murders in Pakistan. Mr. Panjwar, for example. There are many examples. This is not unprecedented in today's world for such eliminations of state enemies to happen. So you're asking me to explain why would Trudeau do this? Well, if he believed that a foreign government sent killers to murder a Canadian in Canada, yeah, he would get up and complain about it. Would you expect him to say, well, I don't care, it's probably a terrorist anyway, kill them all, I don't care. I'm not going to say a word about it. Is that what you would expect? I wouldn't. I think whoever expected that response, that the Canadians would be discreet about this and they won't object if we send murderers into Canada to kill a Canadian. Whoever thought that was pretty naive, don't you think?
Okay. Veena, you want to come in here? Actually, we will also have to wrap it up. You please come in here and also give your, last comments.
Yeah, okay, if I may say so, the question is not any of the things that Terry had just said, but the question is that if you're a year and a half ago or a year and some months ago, you said credible allegation, you have not been able to move beyond that. And you're still at the level of credible allegation and still making the relationship worse and worse and worse by saying, oh, the High Commissioner is the person of interest, we got to do this, and now the Prime Minister knew, the Home Minister knew. I mean, nobody can understand. There's no linkage between the two. And normally, whenever such cases do happen, if there are such cases, you take it up with the government concerned, you talk about it very seriously, and you sort it out. And this is how it should be done. As a responsible member of the international community, this is how any discussions, if there is whatever kind of interest that a government may have in another government for any actions or lack of it, to say you take it up responsibly. You don't stand up in parliament and talk about credible allegations, which the rest of the world is bemused by it. that is this the steps taken by a responsible leader? And we all know his father's own, I mean, going back so many years, 43 years, that he too had this soft spot for the Khalistanis. And this is what is very difficult for India to understand. It's very difficult for India
Okay.
and the rest of the world to understand that when there's no interest in India for Khalistanis, and why are you talking about Pakistan or this or that? I don't understand. Why is there sudden interest that, if something has happened in Pakistan, it's got to be India's doing. If something has happened somewhere else, it's got to be India's doing. I mean, this is absolutely bizarre. It seems like almost an India phobia which is coming on, because, you're just blaming everything on India. And it doesn't seem logical at all. It doesn't seem sustainable at all. And to go on saying the same things for a year and a half without proving any evidence, and we've gone for all the meetings, we've gone for all the discussions, we said very clearly what we have to say. We know about all this. We are very aware about intelligence and evidence, evidence inputs, all that. But to say that in a year plus, nothing more has come except those intel inputs, and on the basis of that, you want to go ahead and say and talk about everybody else in the world. Anything happening in the world has got to be India. Now, India is this, India has got to be, stubbed on everything. This is something we don't understand. And one would have expected that from a country like Canada, which we have a very traditional friendship and a very traditional respect for each other. But where is it going? Where is it going? I think we need to get back to our seriousness and to build relationships, not destroy them.